Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why. Good evening and welcome to Pause for the Truth. I am your co host, Jocelyn Turner. So wonderful to be with you all tonight. I decided to dress in my holiday fair with my Santa and Mrs. Claus right here. And yes, this is my favorite time of year. Thankfully, our topic tonight are holiday blues, and thankfully, I don't usually experience those. Just the year that my father passed in 2014, that probably was my lowest holiday blues. But I still try to enjoy and engage in the holiday season. How are you doing, Dr. Kane? Before we introduce our guests.
I'm doing well. I'm not in a Christmas attire. I'm in my chef attire today. So, so, so I think that I'm
And for
feeling.
those So, Dr. Kane, you mentioned Shaft. Do you think that the new generation knows who Shaft is?
Depending on what you call a new generations, y'all got so many different XYZ and whatever else. But millennials do think to Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah, Dr. Ellis may not know who Shaft is because she's a bit younger
Original
than us.
Shaft, the
I don't remember his name, but I have seen images. I'm considered an older millennial.
shut your mouth.
So, we also have joining us again before we formally introduce Dr. Ellis, our behind the scenes guy who, he picks and chooses, Dr. Ellis, which show likes to come from behind the scenes. So apparently this is a topic that he's interested in. How are you doing this evening, Tyrone?
I'm doing wonderful, Miss Jocelyn. Thank you very much. And yes, I am very interested and excited to talk about the holiday blues.
So now, without further ado, introducing drum roll, Dr. Michelle Ellis. How are you doing, Dr. Ellis?
I'm great. I wish I would have dressed up in my Christmas sweater, but I am wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. And, although you seem to have a very pleasant personality and all, I tell you, when you and I were communicating and you said holiday blues, I was like, okay, and you're not talking about the blues as in music. You're talking about the blues as in this time of year just doesn't seem to be a happy one for some folks. But before we get started, tell us a little bit about Dr. Michelle Ellis.
Wow. Well, I am the owner of a private practice, Beyond Me Counseling and Consulting. I am a licensed professional counselor. I am a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida, and I am also licensed in Pennsylvania. I have a PhD in counselor education and supervision. I graduated from UCF, so go Knights if there are any Knights that are out there listening. And I'm also, oh no, Dr. Kane's like, no, we don't recognize UCF. And I'm also a faculty member. I'm an assistant professor at Jacksonville University in the clinical mental health counseling department. So I've been in the counseling field for over a decade. I know I may not look like it, but I've worked with a number of different populations, adolescents, kids, going in-home, residential, school setting, just kind of seeing a variety of clientele over my years of working with people. And I really am passionate about mental health, working with individuals that have, suffered some emotional distress or have some mental health concerns. And like you said, this time of year is wonderful and bright. And, we're listening to our favorite Donny Hathaway songs, and we're listening to the Temptations and, the Jackson 5, but also there are people that are struggling this time of year for a variety of reasons. And I'm just thankful that you invited me to come talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. And I'm going to go ahead and get the conversation started by asking you, how can someone differentiate between typical holiday stress and more serious mental health concerns?
Yeah. So when you talk about just typical, typical stress around the holidays, you're a little overwhelmed with having to purchase presents. I don't know about you, but I'm not done purchasing presents for the year. You're experiencing more days than not that you might be tearful. You might be experiencing hopelessness. You might be down. One symptom of depression that we don't really recognize as much, but is definitely worth looking into and tapping into within ourselves, is irritability. Are you upset? Are you irritable? Are you frustrated and you have a temper? Are you a little bit more, testy with your spouse or your dog or your kids? Those are some signs that more days than not that you are having a difficult time. That is an indication that no, maybe you don't have a clinical diagnosis of depression, but it is an indication that you might need to reach out beyond yourself and get some professional help from someone else.
How does a family member or loved one who recognize that progression in behavior, how do they approach someone to say, I notice you have not been the same lately. Is there something going on? Exactly how should they respond to that?
So that is a really challenging conversation to have with anybody, especially within our community, the Black community. It could be really challenging to bring up mental health, especially if you're saying, hey, you might want to go talk to somebody. But normalizing that a lot of people need to talk to somebody. Believe it or not, this time of year, this is when therapists have an influx of clientele. The local therapists, their books are going to be pretty full at the beginning of the year because it is not uncommon that people are struggling. Having a conversation, I always recommend sandwiching. And so you might want to, lead with a strength or a compliment or something positive that you're seeing, sandwiching in some of that, critical feedback. I'm noticing that you're a little testy. I'm noticing that you're a little bit more frustrated, and then layering it with something else that is a little bit more positive to kind of ease in the conversation and not make somebody feel like they're abnormal or crazy. But they might just need a little extra support.
I said I wasn't going to be the first one to say it.
I put in quotes. So
some of the big only point I might want to challenge a little bit is that you said that the people like yourself, the practitioners, the people that can give us all the help we need, their calendars are going to be full at the beginning of the year. Their calendar will be full all year.
I know.
I mean, lately it's been very difficult to get someone in to see someone like yourself because your guys' hands are full. I mean, you just got so much business that you can have. Not telling anybody not to send you more business. I'm just saying it's overwhelming for the primary care, especially because we're trying to take care of all aspects. And then when someone comes along and has some mental health issues going on, it takes time. 5 minutes won't do, and that means the practitioner has either a setback. We do have practitioners listening, so that's why I'm making this comment. They either have to set their schedule back. If you have more than 1 or 2 people in there that day with some stressful issues, you can lose an hour easy and get behind in an hour in a heartbeat. Yes. That's one. The other thing is that one of the is stressful enough this time of year, and for primary care doctors trying to recognize who's in trouble and who's not in trouble is, as you just kind of elaborated on, is very difficult for us to do it. So I can only imagine with some family members, unless they're really paying a lot of attention to that family member, it may be even more difficult for them.
Yeah, now one of the things I did have an opportunity, as we do try to do some research before the show, and I found it very interesting that you say that this time of the year is very, very busy. And that's good in a way to hear, because as far as the Black and minority communities, historically, we're some of the least likely to seek the support for these type of things. But I also noticed something that was a little bit interesting from Psychology Today and Science. They said that January in the U.S. as historically has the greatest number of deaths in it. So as people are going through the holiday and they're thinking about loved ones that have been lost and things of this nature, does that add to their level of frustration and blues, so to speak?
Absolutely. Grief and loss is a huge part of this. I would say grief and loss is one of those big issues that people are thinking about during this time of year. You're thinking about previous holiday memories where you had loved ones that are unfortunately no longer here. And when you think about COVID, which was impactful to our entire society, we lost generations of loved ones.
Yes.
And all of us lost people. We seemingly had to continue to move forward with life. And for many people, they haven't had an adequate amount of time to grieve. Funeral services just did not look the same. We were all virtual. And while I'm thankful that we had the technology to be able to do, connect virtually, that just still people did not have an opportunity to process the grief and loss the way that they are typically accustomed. And there was so much of it during that time. Another thing that happens during this time of year is that we've lost daylight. So there just is less daylight. And that really impacts people's mental health. So if a person is already struggling with depression or depression-like symptoms, having less light during the day, especially the last 7 to 10 days here in Jacksonville, has been unseasonably cold. It's been raining. We haven't seen the sun as much. You start to see those symptoms of seasonal affective disorder. And that really can negatively impact people's mental health as well.
I like to make sure that patients are aware, as what you just said, in terms of the limited amount of daylight. We're already, as you're doing the winter, we're already low in daylight. So it means a lot to those people who are vitamin D deficient.
Yes.
And vitamin D deficiency may have have a depression component with it because you're not getting that ultraviolet light that to stimulate the formation of vitamin D. So, and then top upon that, especially in African Americans, because we already have the melatonin, the melanin in our skin, melanated skin, we even have lower vitamin D levels to start out with. So that's one of the things I would like for patients, just throwing a plug, pay attention to the vitamin D level and maybe seek some vitamin D supplementation to assist with this.
And Dr. Kane, can that be over the counter? Or do you need to
Yes, it can, up to 10, I think they sell over the counter at 2,000 units a day. That's the max, but you can, 2,000 units a day can easily get up to 60,000 a month. So that is that's a good number. I do kind of like people to check at least once every now and then, once every couple of years, to check the vitamin D level. But their primary care can help them decide on that.
Yeah, Dr. Ellis, my next question was going to be to you. Are there specific triggers during the holiday season that contribute to emotional distress, other than the change in the time zone? Because I just absolutely hate when they do that, right?
Me too.
So, it just seems like it just zaps the energy out of you. But are there any particular triggers that contribute to emotional distress this time of year?
There can be, but those are usually individualized, right? And so if you're already suffering from financial issues, this time of year can be really tough, knowing that you're being bombarded with ads, you're getting coupons in the mail, you're seeing advertisements on the television, and there's just the general sense is that we should be shopping until we drop, right? And maybe you don't have it. That can be a trigger for folks, right? And so I would say that there are triggers, but those are pretty individualized depending upon the person.
And lately, one of the other things, Ms. Turner, just to throw it out there, is one of the big things that you and I see all the time, you, me, and Tyrone, we look at, is the housing situation. I mean, it can be particularly worse And we're already seeing a 12% increase in people, being unhoused, as I call it, not having any place to stay. And so I can only imagine how detrimental to their mental well-being, not only that, but also their physical health, how devastating that can be. But those with kids, it's even hurting more because, you hate to see your kid hurt. And so parents tend to internalize that and try to deal with it. But this is a rough time of year for them as well.
Dr. Ellis, are there some
Tyrone, I'm sorry, I want to build upon that. I want to talk about a situation real quick before yesterday, something happened. I looked out the window where I work and I saw a woman laying on the ground, seemingly lifeless, right? And we just started freaking out, like, is she alive? Oh, my coworker was like, doesn't look like she, is breathing. We're across the street looking out the window. And then the lawn guys were out there and they literally rode past her on one of the riding lawnmowers. She didn't budge. Anyway, long story short, I ended up calling the sheriff's office. Officer came out. He was taking, I won't say he was taking long, but he went the wrong direction because you have to give them instructions on where to go. So one of my colleagues and I, we walked outside to go and flag him down. But by the time we turned the corner, he was there talking to the woman, and she had stood up actually. And so we were done the rest of the day. Just the thought of that have been someone's child, loved one, laying there, because she was seemingly lifeless. And then she stood up after the cop left. She was trying to flag people down to get, and then she ended up standing in front, walked away, and then she came back, and I had my blind up because I had been looking out the window, and she stood at the window. I didn't even know you could see through the window until yesterday. And she started waving like, help me, help me. And that was just so stressful to us, to see someone. And I don't know if the woman, Dr. Kane, was homeless or not, but it was just really emotional for us in wondering what would make an individual. And first thing that folks say, oh, they must be on some drugs. But I always think that, the drugs, they're probably using that to suppress some other issues that are going on with them.
Yeah. And what it sounds like you're describing is some secondary or vicarious trauma, right? And so we can recognize that people experience trauma if you were the unhoused individual, or if you were involved in some sort of, emergency, a shooting, a fire, something along those lines, right? But we very rarely talk about what it is like to be the person on the outside observing those things happening to other people, and our humanity kicks in. And we realize that we are in some different, levels of emotional distress by observing. That secondary trauma can also be very difficult for folks. And so that's what it sounds like you're describing as you're talking about this woman that was unfortunately laying on the ground.
Yeah, we were for the next couple of hours, just could not believe. And then the fact that people seem to be desensitized to it, because other than us, everybody else was driving by and they look over and we're like, what? Wait a minute. This is not normal. What is going on, people?
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, go ahead, Tyrone. I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention that since Dr. Kane mentioned about unhoused.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, and it's obvious that those who care and have deep concern for humanity, it affects them. So many have been desensitized, and so that's a shame. But my question was going to be, so now as we're approaching the holidays, are there things that we can do to prepare ourselves to make them less stressful, less imposing on us with regards to either whether it be trauma, whether it be loss, or things of that nature?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is what you said, attempting to create a plan. So what specifically for you is distressing to you? Is it the weather? Is it the loss of a loved one? Is it that you have expectations about the holidays that may be unmet? For many people, family dynamics is a trigger, right? In that you love your family, but spending extended periods of time with them on the holidays can really be a challenge. Dr. Kane, that can really be a challenge, right?
Yes.
And so your auntie's gonna get into an argument with your uncle, and so
you don't get engaged. You didn't get the ring when you open it up.
Yes.
You know what?
I don't know anything about that. So.
I want a perfume. I want a ring.
Right. You don't get the presents that you want. Right. And so identifying what that is so that you can create a plan around it. If it's weather related, there are small things that you can do. Dr. Kane obviously, gave an example of something that you could do. It requires for you to go to your doctor, but you also could be intentional about opening up your blinds, like making sure the maximum amount of sunlight that you're able to get. I know that that's part of my routine. I wake up and then I open up the blinds in the house so sun is coming in the house. Do you need to purchase like a sunrise alarm? Do you need to purchase one of those sun lamps? Are you someone that needs an extra boost? If you have family dynamics, do you need to establish some boundaries before you go over insert person's name house for the holidays, right? I don't know about you all, but I know tons of people that are like, okay, so we're going to leave by 8. We're going to leave by this time, right? And establish some boundaries around that. But there are, if it's a loved one lost, is there a way that you would like to incorporate or remember your loved one on the holiday? For some folks, that is really helpful. For other people, they haven't processed the grief in the loss yet enough to incorporate that. And that is also okay, right? Maybe you need, some additional time to yourself by yourself on the holiday, but identifying that and creating a plan. And part of that plan should be caring for yourself. And when I say self-care, I don't mean spending more money. We've really live in a society that really likes to amplify spending money. I love massages. I love pedicures and manicures like the next person, but it doesn't require for you to spend money to care for yourself, because you can care for yourself by drawing a bath, by, making sure you're tending to your sleep hygiene and having a routine. Those are things that I mean by self-care. And those are the areas that you might want to, attend to as you're creating a plan for the holidays.
A lot of us have a good support system, but some folk don't have a good support system. So who would people reach out to if they feel like they need help?
Yeah. So if you don't feel like you have a great support system, obviously I would suggest reaching out to a mental health provider, right? In that they can help you if you are having some mental health concerns. There are a number of online directories where you can find mental health providers. And the wonderful thing that I love is that more and more the directories are specific to the populations and the different, people that you would like to see. So you could go the traditional route and identify somebody through Psychology Today, for example. That's a very popular site. But therapy for Black girls or therapy for Black men is also very popular if you're looking to connect with somebody that looks like you.
Dr. Ellis, 2 quick things. We'd be happy if you can provide us with some of those websites that, we can put it on with this podcast, put it on our website so that people can access it. The other thing is something that you and Ms. Turner both alluded to in terms of a support group and people to assist those who are may not know, having some bouts with depression. But I'm looking at a particular group, some of the elderly group who don't get out that much, and they really need some family contact to come in and help them break the monotony of the day. In addition, I'm asking those who do go into the household of more elderly people, alluding to something as far as opening those blinds, because they can easily fall into that the sundowning type situation when you don't open up and know exactly what time of day it is, and they can get lost in that and that time warp, so to speak, and not be aware of the correct time and day and night and it can get very confused, I guess is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
And so I want family members, because we're seeing a whole lot of dementia these days, like most practitioners, whole lot of dementia, and some of the same things that happen with the dementia help us with the depression and stuff during the holidays, can help those who have dementia in terms of interacting with others, and to formulate some kind of a system where they can test their memory and or improve their memory on a daily basis. But one of the key things is what you just said. At least let them be able to differentiate between night and day by opening up the blinds and seeing sunlight for a change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I do like that ideal. It's very easy to take for granted during this here time or any time of the year that you have a built-in excuse to go by and visit loved ones and talk with them. You're on my mind because of the holidays.
Yeah,
and so then it gives you an opportunity to assist them and to be able to, if not only bring light from letting up the blinds, but a little laughter goes a long way as well. So let's not undercut that at all.
And don't ask for no gifts while you're there, Tyrone.
Well, hold on now. If I come over.
I'd also like to mention 2 resources while we're talking about that. Elder Source obviously is one resource that people can tap into, the Area Agency on Aging, for people who have need resources for the elderly population. And also they can, if anyone thinks that they are experiencing depression, dial the 988 hotline. 988 is a new national hotline that anyone can call and have someone to talk to. And again, we just don't know what things people are experiencing nowadays. Dr. Ellis, I'd like to ask you, are there any patterns or themes you've observed in clients who struggle with the holiday blues, and how do you typically address them in therapy?
Yeah. So one thing that I'm noticing is that there's low energy. Like I said, that irritability. There's actually an assessment that I give. It's a very short assessment, and I'm pretty sure a lot of medical professionals give it out also. The physicians, that it's called the PHQ-9. It's a very short assessment.
Every patient.
Yeah. And so I'm noticing those that are having a difficult time, you'll see a slight increase or a bump in those scores. It's an open access assessment. And so anybody can access it and take it for yourself. If you take it for yourself, and let's say you're scoring around like a 9-10, like you're moderate, depressive symptoms, or if you're noticing that you are scoring in some of the categories that talk about, wanting to end your life, wanting to do, self-harm, those are all indications that you should go and talk to somebody immediately. I agree that the 988 number and resource is really helpful. And actually, as I was driving around town a couple of weeks ago, I actually saw a little sign in Riverside that had the 988 information on it. I was really impressed by that. I don't know who did that, but it's definitely helpful and something that people need to utilize if they feel like they're in distress or in need.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ellis. We don't want you to go anywhere. Every episode of Pause for the Truth, we feature our Black History moment, History Maker moment, I should say, at the 7:00 hour. So Tyrone is going to cue that up, give you a chance to drink some water, and we'll be back with the discussion. Don't go away, anyone.
Hello and welcome to Pause for the Truth's History Makers Minute, December 19th, 2023. As we reflect on the past and present, it is important to recognize the people who have made significant contributions to America and the rest of the world. Today we present Herman George Kennedy, Ph.D. Born in 1901. Herman George Kennedy, Ph.D., a foundational black psychologist, was born in 1901 in Okmulgee, Oklahoma, and passed in 1970. He was a clinical and social psychologist and earned all his degrees from Northeastern University. He is most known for being the first psychologist to study how the race of the test proctor may create bias in IQ testing through his master's thesis, The Effects of Rapport on the IQ, a study in racial psychology. This thesis provided suggestions for cultivating adequate test environments. Throughout his career, he served many appointments, beginning with succeeding the position of Francis Sumner, the first Black person to have a PhD degree in psychology, as chair of the psychology department at the West Virginia Collegiate Institute, now West Virginia State College. Another appointment included the designated diplomate of the American Board of Examiners in Professional Psychology. He played fundamental roles in the founding of the West Virginia Psychological Association, the West Virginia State Board of Psychological Examiners, and the Charleston, West Virginia, Guidance Clinic. Kennedy was also an avid member of the American Teachers Association, which was formed in response to the National Education Association's racist ban on Black teachers. Additionally, he served as an expert witness for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People in segregation and employment discrimination cases. Some of Kennedy's honors include the Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Middle Eastern Provincial Achievement Award and Northwestern University's Alumni Merit Award. One of his notable publications, Psychology in Negro Institutions, is the only known published research work that assessed the status, training, and research efforts of early psychologists in Black colleges and universities. Throughout his career, his efforts prepared universities of all kinds and the workforce to train and accept Black psychologists. He thus paved the way for the Black psychologists of today.
Well, I'll tell you, these history maker moments, we've learned a lot about persons who I always say pave the way for those of us who are working in some of the industries we are now. I know in Jacksonville, there are a couple of organizations that I'm aware of, the Black Psychologists Association or group, forgive me if I botch their names, and the Association of Black Social Workers, just as two examples. Joining us this evening is Dr. Michelle Ellis. We've been talking about the holiday blues, how this time of year is not necessarily a good one. Tyrone, when you get a moment, if you would, please, thank you, first of all, for that history maker moment. If you can post that question that or display the question someone had, that'll be great. And the question that was posted is, how can we help people going through depression? Can we refer them to any local service to assist them? And we may have already touched on it a bit, but I just wanted to make sure that we ask that question.
Yeah, so I would say if you're noticing some depressive symptoms, like we talked about before, initiating a conversation, it might feel internally awkward, but that can make all the difference. And normalize seeking out help, right? So letting them know that it is totally okay, it's normal for people to need some additional assistance. And I think we talked about a couple of resources. If you think that someone needs immediate help, the 988 number is the preferred one to utilize. That is kind of listed below. But if, they can wait for an appointment, maybe a week or two, going on Psychology Today, or some of the other online directories might be a better suited fit.
And of course, if they would like to refer to you, then we also can make sure we share that information as well.
Yes.
So do you recommend any specific mindfulness or relaxation techniques to help manage holiday stress?
Yes. So breathing exercises can be really helpful. It's not just what we, breathing and kind of talking about the yoga elements, but there are physiological benefits to breath, right? You could do box breathing. That's really helpful. I give my clients images. It's a box, and every side of the box is 4, holding a count of 4. 4, 7, 8 is another way to breathe and kind of allow your body to calm down. You can't be tense and calm at the same time. But practicing those things while you are not in emotional distress is something that I stress to my clients, because once you are at a heightened emotional state, it becomes really difficult to bring yourself down if you haven't already trained. So it's kind of like, Pilates or, lifting weights. You want to work those muscles over time. And then when you really need them, you can utilize the breath as something that's really helpful. If you're not practicing those things when you're at a calm state, it becomes even more challenging to bring yourself down when you're at a distressed state.
So
go ahead.
do you notice how can parents, we haven't talked about children, how can parents detect whether or not their children are experiencing any stressful occurrences, be it might be bullying or whatever, some not appreciating their body, the way they look, whatever the case may be?
Yeah. And, with children, especially adolescents, that can be really tough because one thing that we notice is isolation, right? And on some level, seeking out their own space and their own independence can be really normal and healthy for adolescents. But noting, your child, right? And their normal habits. Noting, are they eating less or are they eating more, right? Or any sharp changes in those behaviors. One way that a lot of us know what's going on with our kids are their social media accounts and keeping tabs on those. I know a lot of parents like to look at their kids' social media accounts, but more and more kids aren't actually posting. It's what they're doing behind the scenes. It's the DMs. It's not what they actually post on Instagram or what they post in their TikToks. They make the videos and they keep them in their drafts. And so keeping tabs on those things can be really helpful in keeping you keyed in on what's actually going on with your child, what kind of conversations they're having. All of those things can be really helpful. But I think more than anything else, opening up a conversation, having the challenging and uncomfortable conversations that we may not have even had with our parents can be really helpful in letting your kids know that you are not just their parent, but you also are a listening ear. And it really does take a village, right? And so, yeah, my daughter may not want to tell me all the things, but she'll tell her aunt or she'll tell her uncle, right? And so also having that village around our children can also make the difference as well.
One of the things I want to just discuss, not in detail, but make mention of anyway, is that a lot of people already have mental health issues before they enter into the holiday. They just get exacerbated.
Yes.
And then some may feel comfort, or some of the family members may feel comfort in that they're being treated for it all already. But what we have to make sure they also recognize that this may be a bit more of a special circumstance that might need additional, and Dr. Ellis, you can correct me if I'm mistaken, may need additional psychological evaluation and or therapy for what it may mean.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree. When I was talking about seasonal affective disorder, a small percentage of individuals actually are formally diagnosed with that disorder. And those individuals have a comorbidity with some other mental health diagnosis, namely, depression, major depression. So typically people are already struggling, and it just is increased because of the pressures of the holidays. Like we said, be it the weather, be it expectations of, financial expectations, be it, the reminder of a loved one lost.
And I made mention of that for two reasons. One, from a primary care standpoint, other physicians taking care of the patients would look like all of a sudden the blood sugars are out of control. All of a sudden the blood pressure is out of control, stuff of that nature. And also for the families whom are used to, I said I wasn't going to say the C word, so I won't, about Uncle Joe. But, Uncle Joe seems to be a little bit worse off, than he has been all year long.
Yeah.
And for some reason, he seems to be, I'm going to say exacerbated. Things may be exacerbated because of the holidays, but in layman's term, you just see Uncle Joe seems to be a bit more edgy than what he used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Usually is.
Right. Right. And, we all have Uncle Joes in our families, and we just haven't been able to have the language in our community to call a thing what it is, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we can name it, we can tame it. And so, hey, a lot of people in my family really have anxiety, right? But we call it something else. And so being able to even have the language around whatever the symptoms are, and maybe it's not a formal diagnosis, but you're seeing tinges of something, right? You're seeing, he kind of talks to himself a little bit. I don't know if it's full-on psychosis, but something's going on there.
You made a good point about language, because sometimes when you're trying to talk to the younger folks or people of different generations. Let me put it that way.
Mhm.
You know, my kids are quick to tell me, Dad, that's not the term we use these days.
Yeah.
Okay, what do we use? Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how am I not supposed to step on somebody's toes when, you know, if I'm in France and they speak in French and I never had a word of French,
Sure.
you know, learn a word of French. Let me put it that way. So I think you're absolutely correct. It's critical to learn the languages of and verbiage of the people with whom you are talking to, whether you're a provider or a family member. Just try to get within their global understanding of what it's all about and see how they can express it to you.
Dr. Ellis, how might cultural or family dynamics impact someone's experiences of holiday-related emotions, and how can therapy address these aspects?
Oh my word. Can you repeat the question? That was a mouthful.
How might cultural or family dynamics impact someone's experiences of holiday-related emotions?
Yeah, I am of the understanding of the belief that we are always interacting and navigating through culture. Whether we want to recognize it or not, that is constantly happening. We talked a little bit about family dynamics before, but it permeates in how holiday blues show up. What we know is that anger is a secondary emotion. And what I mean by that is that is an easier emotion for most of us to express. Part of that is cultural, and I don't mean within the Black community, I just mean within the United States. Like, it's just an easier emotion to express than the vulnerability of something else, be it embarrassment, confusion, fear, whatever you might be feeling behind that is a little bit easier. But for some of us, we have been raised in families where we see certain behaviors more regularly than others. So if you grew up in a family where, hey, if you had a long day, you cool off with a beer and a glass of wine, then that is going to show up typically in future generations. And that has the potential to present itself as, you know, an issue later on if it's a coping strategy, and if there's not a hold on that coping strategy and you're just kind of using it in excess. So I would say culture, be it race, sex, our cultural selves it's always going to show up, and how that can be addressed in counseling is imperative. You need to identify and find somebody, a therapist, that will work with you and recognize who you are, not just through the issue or the concern that you're presenting, but who you are as a whole person. So if you being a Black woman is important to you, it doesn't require for the therapist to also identify as being a Black woman, but they need to clearly understand what that means to you in the cultural context in which you are living as a Black woman.
That question and part of your answer made me want to go, ooh, I got a question. Ooh.
Me too.
So in terms of speaking of culture, understandably, if Billy Bob, you know, if he starts out with a bottle of beer, being his end of the day de-stressor, and all of a sudden it's up to 2 6-packs, and his behavior behind that. And the other part where I really was itching to throw it in, these days with the legalization of marijuana, what we
you had to go there, Dr.
You didn't want to.
You just had to go there, Dr. K.
Right.
That's another show.
Right.
Miss Jocelyn, do your job. Get on him. Tell him that's another show.
But it's playing a significant role. You're seeing it everywhere, and even young kids somehow getting their car certification. You know, and you wonder, like, how did they do that? You know, without definitely if it's one of my patients, how they do that without my help? You know, they got it somehow. But again, the gist of the questions is that we're used to the alcohol and seeing for sure the role that it plays, and a lot of times because of our vast experience with alcohol for generations, we kind of can see what's going on with that. But boy, this marijuana is a whole different ball game. What are we looking at? How do you handle that? Do you have to address that? Are you seeing that? Whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, I think you do have to address it, and it is a newer thing, right? That we haven't had to address in the past. I mean, having to have conversations about not using prior to a session is a legitimate conversation that has to take place. And it's hard for people, anyone that's suffering from a substance abuse, to initially recognize that it's a problem. So that, I mean, it doesn't matter what your um, drug of choice, if you will, is. That's always the case. But if it is something that you are doing habitually and you cannot go days without doing that, and you're starting to notice that your mood changes, if you're not utilizing that substance, but it's also getting in the way of your daily function. It's changing your relationships with people, it's changing your relationship at your employer. Those are all indications that maybe this is something that I don't need to indulge in. And for what it's worth, whether it's marijuana or alcohol or cocaine or shopping, you can be addicted to a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be a controlled substance. It can be food.
It can also be this cell phone.
Yes.
I do want to follow up with that real quick. You just spoke from the patient perspective. How about the family member that's observing these addictive behavior issues? Whether it's responsibility, irresponsibility, yada yada yada.
Sure. Having those conversations are always challenging, and I know that oftentimes we want to have those conversations with our loved ones and not fracture relationships, but sometimes that is what has to happen, is that we have to take a stand that we love our family member more than we care about their comforts, and continuing to use in a way that ultimately can do their own person harm. One thing I love about Jacksonville, if you just drive around, you see a lot of recovery centers. So there are tons of options locally. And I've lived in a couple of different cities. So I say that as a standout of Jacksonville compared to other cities that I've lived in. There are a lot of recovery centers. And so that means that there is some choice. In those recovery centers, some of them, they have different ways of addressing addictive behaviors, right? And so I would suggest, if you are a loved one or a family member, especially during this time where we know that the use of alcohol is kind of promoted, during Christmas, during New Year's. I mean, it honestly is promoted. Eggnog, champagne. If that is something that you're noticing from your loved one, looking into those things, but also keep in mind that if you have a loved one and they are really, struggling, especially with something that is widely acceptable like alcohol, then you might also have to make a decision about whether you are choosing to drink around your family member, right? Because that is a temptation. We can't expect that our loved ones are going to remain abstinent, but we're, downing, big bottles of champagne in front of them. That's just not a feasible thing. And so that might also require for us to make decisions also in support of our loved one.
You don't put a crackhead in a crack house and expect him to come out.
Right.
All right, Dr. Kane. So the question that I have was, though, so as I hear you saying these things, what are your different challenges when you're working with a female versus a male?
So that's a great question. Before I note some differences, I just want to plug one of my colleagues. Her name is Dr. Latanya Summers, actually created a center just for men here in Jacksonville. And if you are a man that specifically lives in the 32209 zip code, you can receive totally free mental health services there. So
only 09? Only 09?
No, it's in person. So I know specifically she's targeting that zip code because it's funded from a grant. But if you live outside of 32209, I would reach out and see if they have openings. And I believe they have virtual and in-person sessions.
Maybe I go stay with my grandma or something.
Right, but it's totally free. But I would say the biggest difference is, so there's two big differences. One, one, women tend to reach out to seek out services more readily than men, especially Black women tend to reach out for mental health services more than Black men, but also how they're showing up in the sessions might look a little bit different, right? And so women, just generally speaking, tend to be socialized to express via emotion. That can come by way of actually expressing and crying and, you know, being expressive, but also being descriptive, right? Sometimes male clients literally don't have the language for what they're feeling. So sessions may look slightly different. And it doesn't mean that the feelings aren't there. It is a symptom of what society has done to men in general, which is inhibited their ability to be emotionally expressive, especially our Black men. You can't be emotionally expressive. And at times that, you know, risks your life. And so that is the major difference, I think, between the two, the rate in which they're seeking out services and how they're showing up while they're seeking out services.
Don't be a wimp. Don't be a wussy versus expressing exactly what it is that, you know, you're feeling and need,
exactly
what your needs are.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Ellis, can you share any success stories or examples of clients who have effectively navigated and overcome holiday blues through therapy with you?
Yeah. Putting me on the spot. Let me think of some folks.
You don't have to give any names now.
Well, that would be a HIPAA violation.
Well, just speak in general then.
Yeah.
Yeah, we knew you were gonna speak in general.
Yeah, of course. But I've had folks come in and kind of want to talk about a specific thing. The holidays come up, and maybe their issue isn't about anything related to the holidays at all. That tends to be what happens. They're coming about some other issue, and then the holidays roll around, and then we begin to kind of unpack some issues. Maybe it is family dynamics, relationships with specific family members, and coming up with a plan to implement during this time of year has been really helpful. Like I said, I tend to utilize a couple of measures, and I know that you have physicians on the call. So the PHQ-9 is one that I use to kind of measure the depression, but I also use the general anxiety inventory to also look at those anxiety measures and kind of see like, oh, I'm noticing this going up. Okay, after we've implemented them in these coping strategies and you've used them, and those are all individualized to the person. Okay, those have gone down a little bit, or they've gone up, and let's kind of adjust, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like medication, where you're constantly monitoring and you're kind of adjusting what the client is, you know, strategies that they're using. And there have been a number of folks that have felt better prepared going into the holidays. So maybe there was some anxiety about reaching out to family members or meeting up with family members. But part of the process of just connecting with someone else and coming up with a plan and utilizing some coping strategies have been really helpful for them. And then we move on to the next thing, right? That no longer is a pressing issue. They want to transition to talk about something else.
I want to make sure I make this statement before we get off, because I know we're getting short on time. So I spoke from a primary care viewpoint, but I do want to remind our specialists that if they wind up having patients who may not be healing as quickly as they should, whom, certain issues that may be accompanying their treatment, whether it's surgery or something along that line, doesn't seem to be getting better, that we have to keep in mind that we may be looking at someone that depression or mental health is playing has a significant impact on what we see in terms of the return on the physical health, the improvement versus no improvement, and so I always think, whether if you're not sure, either refer to their primary care, whom then can refer to a behavioral care specialist, which most specialists is going to do anyway, but they can also go straight to the behavioral care specialist and refer the patients themselves.
So, Dr. Ellis, does insurance typically pay for behavioral health therapy or mental health counseling, or do people have to pay out of pocket for those services?
That's a great question. The answer is yes, they do. Most insurance providers do pay for mental health services, but similar to finding a medical doctor, maybe the therapist that you want to connect with aren't paneled on your particular insurance policy. And so for example, I do take some insurance, but I also have some folks that are self-pay. And you have to kind of make a decision and look at your financial state and see what works for you. If you find a provider that is outside of your network, there is also an opportunity to pay out of pocket and then get what we call a super bill and then give it to your insurance policy. And then you can get the money back that you paid in, your counseling and behavioral health services from your insurance provider because they're out of network. But yeah.
Super bill is kind of like a receipt for your care, sort of, more or less.
Gotcha. How can individuals prioritize their well-being during this time of year?
I would say I try to identify at least 15 minutes, like 5 to 10 minutes or 15 minutes a day, right? To take inventory. That could be, like I said, tending to your sleep hygiene. That could be parking a little further away at the store. I know that's something that I try to do. Park a little further away so you're moving your body, right? Everybody doesn't go to the gym. Everybody doesn't enjoy going to the gym, but you can do small everyday things to encourage your physical well-being, your mental well-being, your cognitive well-being, your spiritual well-being, to make sure that you are well during this time of year.
So, Dr. Ellis, guess what? We're at the end of the show. Yay, right? Great discussion. But at the end of every show, we like to give our guests an opportunity to just give some final thoughts regarding tonight's topic. And of course, our topic for this evening was holiday blues. So anything you'd like to say at this point, and don't forget to plug your business.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would just want to normalize that if you are someone that is experiencing the holiday blues, if you're feeling down, if you're observing that a loved one, if your child is feeling down, normalizing some of those feelings and utilizing the resources that we shared. One that I do want to share that's not my own is open. I think it's called opencounseling.com. And they particularly have an inventory of free and affordable counseling, because I know that that's also a major issue within our communities, is finding affordable counseling, especially for folks that are uninsured. Just normalizing some of those feelings and letting folks know that it is totally okay to reach out and talk to someone and receive some additional assistance. Again, I have my own private practice, Beyond Me Counseling and Consulting. And the information, it looks like, is posted below. I am accepting, for now, I am accepting some new clients. And so if you are looking to work with someone, I am available and have, availability on my schedule. And I would love to meet and talk to you.
You see children and adults?
Teenagers, 14 and up.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Kane, what are your final thoughts regarding tonight's topic?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Dr. Ellis, so much for appearing and coming on this and discussing such a difficult topic. Even though I may have been, kidding and trying to keep things lively and somewhat comical, maybe just because of who I am. But anyway, it's a serious subject matter. It is something that is as equivalent to your physical health. Okay, because if you can't function as a total unit, then you may not be functioning well at all. Yeah. The other thing that I think we didn't get a chance to discuss much of is that making sure that people understand that not all situations is just from the holidays. Not all situation is situational. Let me put it that way. There may be some chemistry defect that is occurring, and you can't just wish your way out, exercise your way out, think your way out of as an example, depression, or as you say in some other psychotic type behavior. So keep that in mind, that sometimes medication is warranted. Okay. I know most people, especially black folk, I ain't taking that mess. I don't, no, not me. But sometimes it is warranted because of a chemical deficiency in your brain. So, it's up to doctors to try to figure that out. And the whole hope is that we get a good physician, whether or not they're the psychiatrist or a good physician, primary care with a person like Dr. Ellis, who fully understands much better than we do human behavior. So we appreciate you coming on, and this is not a laughing matter, and I take it as serious as anything when I walk in my door and I see patients in that 8x8 room, and it's like Las Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Thank you, Dr. Kane. Tyrone, what about you? What are your final thoughts regarding tonight's topic?
First of all, I want to echo what Dr. Kane said and thank Dr. Ellis for coming on. It is a very spirited conversation. There are a couple of things that I noted, and I think it's important for our viewers and listeners to take note of. One of the things she said was that the different way men and women handle the expression of what's going on inside of them. Women, she said, in some cases can be more verbal, more emotional, crying, things of that nature. But I really like what she said in the sense that men oftentimes find inadequate words to describe what's going on with them. So as an outside person, when you're dealing with someone who's a male and you think they're having challenges, you need to be prepared to work through that with them and to help them get the help that they need. So I really liked that point as well. And that's pretty much how I would like for everybody to know.
Thank you, Tyrone. And again, just to echo Dr. Ellis, thank you so much for coming on the podcast tonight. As Dr. Kane says, this is often a difficult topic. However, we try to make the discussion as lively as we can, but it surely did not mean that we didn't take this topic serious. A lot of people, for various reasons, I shared that before we came on the air, that when my dad passed, that was a very difficult year. And I didn't share with you that when my dad got his cancer diagnosis and was given a year to live, I actually went to a therapist. Dr. Kane was my primary care doctor at the time, and one of my good friends is an LCSW, and they thought that, I can just talk to them. But no, I kind of needed someone who didn't know me and someone that I could go to and really process that, right? And so I think the thing that I'd like to share to people, that it's okay to go and see a therapist or call a therapist. It's really okay. And it really helped me, because not only did I deal with the soon to be loss of my parent, some other things that I was going through at the time at work or whatever in my personal life. So just want to encourage people that it's okay to seek therapy, and it's okay to talk to someone. If you don't know where to go, you can always dial 211 or the 988 line as two options for folks to call and to find out what's the best place to call. And as Dr. Kane said, don't forget those elderly persons who, a few elderly folks that I've talked to recently start reminiscing. They don't have any siblings here anymore. Their parents are gone. No one who was born when they were born, their biological family, nuclear family, they're all gone. So it is important that we listen to what people are saying and know that those are serious thoughts and feelings that people have. Thank you again,
Ms. Turner. One thing before we go off, Dr. Ellis, we would like very much so to have you back. And it'd be great to have you and the colleague that you gave a plug for, because we can expand our discussion.
Absolutely. I would love that.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, thank you as always for tuning in to Pause for the Truth. And I'll go ahead and say it now. Merry Christmas, and we will see you again soon. Take care now.
Welcome to Pause for the Truth. We are grateful that you joined us today and hope you've gained valuable insights on our current topic. We look forward to having you with us next time as we explore trending issues in our community and discover ways to simplify life for you and your loved ones. Our dedicated panelists and staff are committed to sharing knowledge and serving our community. But now, we need your support. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and spread this valuable knowledge to others. Don't forget to invite your family and friends to tune in to our podcast every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. EST. Visit our website at www.pauseforthetruth.com and show your support by liking us on Facebook, following us on Twitter, and linking with us on LinkedIn. Feel free to email us with any questions, or concerns, or show topic recommendations at info@pauseforthetruth.com. I would also like to give thanks to our behind-the-scenes technology engineer, Tyrone Jackson, owner and operator of Call Tyrone. Go to www.calltyrone.com